This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
For the better part of a decade, this woman moved heaven and earth, trying to get her daughter and grandchildren out of Tallahassee and down to Miami. She fought in court. She schemed about it. In emails, she allegedly funded a murder over it. And now, at 75 years old, Donna Adelson is finally home. A place for mom. Not quite. 30 miles south of her old life, behind razor wire at Homestead Correctional Institution. You know, a place for mom. According to Florida Department of Correction records updated this week, she's been transferred from the reception center in Ocala to the Miami-Dade facility her defense team specifically requested. Judge Stephen Everett granted that request and recommended that to the state that she be incarcerated near the Miami area. So here we are. The woman who orchestrated the killing because she couldn't stand the idea of her grandchildren growing up 500 miles away now lives in a cage close enough to smell the ocean she'll never see again. There's a word for that. I think it's irony. Or maybe justice. Depends on who you ask. We're going to get into the story. Before we do, your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube, please do leave them there. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast right now, while you're listening, if you're liking our commentary and enjoying this, hey, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd really, really appreciate that. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Look that up, find us, and your kind words are so much appreciated. We put crazy amounts of hours into our work here, and those nice words, they help us grow in the rankings and other folks find us. So if you're enjoying this, please do. Thank you. All right, let me back up for a second here, because if you're just tuning into this case, you need to understand the scope of what we're talking about. Dan Markel was a 41-year-old law professor at Florida State University, Harvard law grad, respected scholar, father of 2 young boys. On July 18th, 2024, he dropped his kids off at preschool, went to the gym, and drove home to his house in Benton Hills neighborhood of Tallahassee. He pulled into his garage. You know, like you do. At the end of the day, you're going home. A man he'd never met walked up to his car and shot him twice in the head. Dan Markel died because his ex-wife's family couldn't accept a custody arrangement. That's it. That's the whole thing. He died because Donna Adelson wanted her grandchildren closer to Miami, and Dan Markel had the audacity to want to remain in his son's lives. It took 11 years, 5 trials, and 5 convictions to get to where we are now. The hitmen are in prison. The go-betweens is in prison. The son who hired them is in prison, though not in Florida. Charlie Adelson was transferred in 2024 to a facility in South Dakota over security concerns. And now the mother, the matriarch, the one prosecutors say set the whole thing in motion, she's in prison too. Homestead Correctional Institution. 30 miles from the dental empire she built with her husband, a short drive from the life she'll never touch again. The transfer to state custody happened fast. Judge Stephen Everett sentenced her on October 13th of 25, life without parole, plus 30 years on conspiracy and solicitation to run consecutively. By 5:48 the next morning, the court records show she was released to the Florida Department of Corrections. No lingering there. You don't have to let it linger. You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to let it linger. No last-minute motions. They moved her out while it was still dark. She processed through the Florida Women's Reception Center in Ocala, which is standard for female inmates entering the state system. And from there, she was assigned to Homestead. It's a level 4 facility, capacity around 668 women, a mix of minimum, medium, and closed custody. They offer GED programs, cosmetology training, substance abuse counseling, and religious services. The kind of institutional betterment programs that sound nice on paper and actually mean very little when you're 75 years old and you're never getting out. The defense has asked for this placement specifically. Get her close to Miami, close to Harvey, close to whatever's left of the life she had. The prosecution asked for something else entirely. Keep her away from Katherine Magbanua. Magbanua is at Lowell Annex in Ocala. serving her own life sentence for her role as a go-between who connected the Adelson money to the men who pulled the trigger. She was Charlie Adelson's girlfriend. She had 2 kids with one of the hitmen. She was the bridge between the wealthy South Florida family and a pair of killers connected to the Latin Kings. Prosecutor Georgia Kappelman told the judge there were some concerns, not just about the 2 women crossing paths, but what about inmates friendly with Magbanua, ending up wherever Donna lands? They did indicate that they would be able to separate them. Defense attorney Jackie Fulford acknowledged that sentencing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that folks who are familiar with or friendly with Miss Magbanua wouldn't be where Miss Adelson would be. That concern isn't paranoid, it is practical. As much as it's like, so? Are you insinuating that someone who might be friends with Magbanua, who had connections with people that have connections to kill, might be close to Donna at some point in time, and we're concerned about this? I get it. Donna had already been assaulted while awaiting trial in Leon County Jail. Back in December of 24, an inmate allegedly shoved her face first into her bunk. Shucks. When Donna asked why, the woman reportedly told her it was because she's a effing killer. There were extortion attempts, bathroom confrontations. Donna didn't report the incident until February when she finally told jail officials what had happened. She ended up in protective custody after that, locked down most of the day, out of her cell for maybe an hour on good days, 20 minutes on others. No tablet access, which meant no way to communicate with her attorneys, which is why she got transferred to the Ocala County Jail before trial. The point is this: Donna Adelson learned very quickly that money and status mean nothing behind bars. The woman who once ran a dental, what do they call it? The institute, the Adelson Institute, who raised her children in comfort, who wrote checks that prosecutors say were used to cover up a murder. She's now navigating the world where respect is earned in ramen packets and commissary favors. That's the trade she made. That's what control gets you in the end. The sentencing itself was the spectacle. Donna had stayed silent through the entire trial, 11 days of testimony. Witnesses including her own son, Charlie, her own daughter, Wendy, jailhouse informants, co-conspirators, law enforcement. She sat there and listened to all of it without saying a word in her own defense. Her attorneys indicated she might testify. She didn't. But when it came time to address the court before sentencing, she couldn't help herself. She stood there in a purple jail jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists, and delivered a lengthy, tearful defiance statement insisting she was innocent. I'm an innocent woman, she told the judge. I swear to you on my life, I had nothing to do with Danny's murder. She called Dan Markel, the man prosecutors say she paid to have executed in his own driveway, a fine and decent man. She said his death was a loss to his children, his parents, his sister, all of us, and his family, his friends, his colleagues, in the legal community, of the students at FSU Law School. And that's true. It is. It's a horrible loss. She blamed the media for poisoning the jury pool. She blamed the system for failing her. She said she'd never even gotten a parking ticket before this. Well, parking tickets aren't exactly a prerequisite to murder. You'll find a lot of people that get charged with murder also pretty clear on their records. Judge Everett interrupted her multiple times, warning that her statements demonstrated what he called an utter lack of remorse. She kept going anyway, in true narcissist fashion. And her husband, Harvey, spoke too. And according to the Tallahassee Democrat, both of them rallied against the entire criminal justice system. That's who the Adelsons are. Even standing at the edge of spending the rest of their lives apart, they couldn't stop fighting the outcome. They couldn't stop performing. The Markel family responded publicly after the sentencing. Ruth and Phil Markel, Dan's parents, called Donna's statements disrespectful and delusional. They spent 11 years fighting for accountability. They spent years fighting just to see their own grandchildren, and they had to sit there and listen to the woman convicted of orchestrating their son's murder claim she was the real victim. That's what stays with me on this. The jury deliberated for only a few hours. That's it, a few hours to convict a 75-year-old grandmother of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. The jury that convicted her son Charlie 2 years earlier, moved just as quickly. 2 Adelsons, 2 juries, same conclusion. Exposed to different evidence, different witnesses, different defense strategies, and both groups of 12 people reached the same verdict in about the same amount of time. The only question was how long it would take everyone else to see what those jurors saw in an afternoon. Now comes the appeal. On November 4th, Donna's attorneys Joshua Zellman and Jackie Fulford filed notice with the First District Court of Appeals. They're challenging everything: pretrial rulings, evidentiary decisions, the verdict itself, and the sentence. It's a kitchen sink approach, which is standard when you're facing life without parole and you got the money to fight it. But it seems that all you're getting is an attorney that works out of a crematorium. Not making that part up. Charlie Adelson filed his appellate brief back in May, arguing that the trial should have been moved out of Tallahassee because of pretrial publicity. This case has been covered extensively. Here, Court TV, broadcasts of the trial, podcasts have dissected every detail like we have. Newspapers have followed it for over a decade. Charlie's team argued there was no way to seat an impartial jury in Leon County. The state said, no, we can do that. Except Donna's team, or expect Donna's team, rather, to make that same argument that it wasn't fair. They'll probably also revisit the jailhouse informant issue. The defense tried hard to suppress testimony from Donna Bernhardt, the woman Donna called her jailhouse daughter. They argued Bernhardt was essentially acting as an agent for law enforcement, that investigators coached her to extract information. Court filings showed that a investigator told Bernhardt something along the lines of, listen, if she has a casual conversation with you, there's nothing stopping you from having a conversation with her. Don't make things weird. Don't initiate any of these conversations. The defense said that crossed a line. The judge allowed the testimony anyway. Whether that becomes appellate error or remains yet to be seen. Let's be honest about what appeals in murder cases usually accomplish. They buy time. They extend the story. They rarely reverse convictions, especially when the evidence in that defense and the jury, and they move this fast with it. Donna Adelson will likely die in prison. The appeal is just the last act of a woman who spent her whole life refusing to accept outcomes she didn't like. Speaking of Drina Bernhardt, she's been talking a lot since Donna's conviction. Bernhardt has done some interviews, including a podcast appearance with Joel over at Surviving the Survivor, where she offered a rare glimpse into what Donna Adelson's life looks like behind bars, and it's not pretty. According to Bernhardt, Donna is consumed with worry about Harvey. She believes her husband has lost significant weight and fallen into a deep depression since her incarceration. Has he? Or is he losing weight and living it up in the villages? If I were Harvey, I'd be like, thank God, free at last. After more than 50 years of marriage, Donna managed everything: the bills, the household, the decisions, the family calendar, the entire architecture of their lives. Now, according to Donna, Harvey's alone in Miami in his 80s, and Donna fears he can't function without her. I don't know. I honestly don't know. She worries he can't pay the bills. She worries he can't cook for himself. She worries he can't do laundry. Or is this just the work of a narcissist going, no one can survive without me, when in reality everybody can get along just fine? You know, I saw a lot of ladies in that trial sitting right behind Harvey that looked like they were from some of those, older folk communities, whatever, in their villages. I know they're not in the villages, but that's what I think of when I think of Florida. That, they last got their wardrobe at Dayton's in 1989. Some people got that. And they looked fresh and ready to be extras on the 1980s version of Miami Vice. Except they've aged a lot. So I don't know. I think Harvey might be able to find some assistance. I think Harvey might be happy without you, Donna. I know you don't want to think that, but I don't know. I'm not Harvey. I can't speak for Harvey. But if you're escaping that shit show at you're 80, you're like, I still got a few more years left. Early bird special. Down at the Ruth Chris. Ladies, she worries he can't cook for himself. She worries he can't do laundry. There's something almost tragic about that if you set aside for a moment what she did to earn her spot in a cell. A woman who controlled everything now can't control whether her husband eats dinner. At least that's what she thinks. But Bernhardt revealed something else, something that cuts closer to the bone of this case, the fracture between Donna and her daughter, Wendy. According to Bernhardt, Donna believes Wendy holds her responsible for the family's destruction, that Wendy blames her mother's vocal opposition to Dan Markel for setting off this chain of events that ended with family members in prison. And if you look at the text messages presented at trial, you can see why that tension exists. After Charlie was convicted in November of 23, Donna texted Wendy, "Your brother protected you for years, and now you are not guilty. Your lawyer took very good care of you." Read it again. "Your brother protected you for years. Now you are not guilty. Your lawyer took very good care of you." Your brother protected you. The implication in those texts is hard to miss. Charlie was facing consequences. Wendy wasn't. Another jailhouse witness, Patricia Bird, who spent 6 to 7 months in custody with Donna, testified that Donna confessed to her role in the murder during their daily conversations. Bird also said Donna tried to buy false testimony from behind bars, still scheming, still trying to manipulate the outcome, even after everything fell apart, even after her son was convicted, even after she was facing the same charges. She couldn't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Any other narcissists like that? That's the portrait of Donna Adelson, a woman who believed she could control everything, now controlling nothing. A woman who prosecutors say paid for a murder and then allegedly tried to pay for lies to cover it up. The hustle never ended. It just stopped working. Now then there's Wendy. The question that won't go away. Will she be charged? State Attorney Jack Campbell addressed this right after the verdict. He said his office would make decisions in the coming weeks. He didn't commit to anything. He didn't rule anything out. And that's where things still stand months later. Wendy Adelson has been identified in court documents as an unindicted co-conspirator. That's a legal term with real weight. It means prosecutors believe she was part of the conspiracy, even if they haven't formally charged her. She's testified at every single trial in the case under a grant of limited immunity. And I want to be clear about something here. Wendy Adelson has consistently and repeatedly denied any involvement in or knowledge of the plot to kill her ex-husband. "I was not involved in any plot to kill Danny," she told the jury during her testimony at her mother's trial. And maybe she wasn't. She has never been charged with a crime in connection with the case. That's the fact of where things stand legally. But here's why the questions persist. Wendy was locked in a vicious custody battle with Dan Markel when he was killed, days after the murder. Days. She packed up her kids and moved them to South Florida, which is exactly what she'd been fighting for in court and exactly what Markel had blocked. She later changed her son's last names from Markel to Adelson. She said it was for their safety. And her brother Charlie, before the murder, had joked about hiring a hitman, something Wendy herself confirmed on the stand. She told police in her initial interview the day Dan was shot that her parents were angry with him. The legal question is complicated. Wendy has immunity, but that immunity has limits. If prosecutors could prove she lied on the stand about her knowledge, about her involvement, about anything material, the immunity agreement could potentially be challenged. And even with the agreement intact, prosecutors heard everything she said. They can use the knowledge they gained to pursue different angles. There's also the principal theory under Florida law. You don't have to pull the trigger to be guilty of murder. You don't have to hire the hitman. You don't have to write the checks. Legal experts who followed the case have noted that if evidence emerged showing Wendy cooperated, aided, or had prior knowledge, that could theoretically be enough to charge her. But as of now, no such charges have been filed. And Wendy maintains she knew nothing. There's a counter-argument worth acknowledging. After 5 convictions, is a 6th necessary? The hitman are in prison. The go-between is in prison. Charlie's in prison. Donna's in prison. If the state goes after Wendy and loses, does that undermine the wins? Is the evidence strong enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, or is it just strong enough to fuel speculation? Prosecutors have to weigh that. As one legal analyst put it, if you've got 5 and go for 6, and you don't get 6, you still got 5. There's a risk calculation here. There's also the question of resources, of appetite, of whether the state believes it can secure a conviction or whether it will be chasing something it can't catch. The Markel family has their own perspective on that question. They've been fighting for access to their grandchildren for over a decade. Florida's grandparent visitation laws were among the most restrictive in the nation, so restrictive that Ruth and Phil Markel had no legal pathway to even petition for contact with their own grandsons after Wendy cut them off following the 2016 arrests. That's why the Markel Act exists. Governor DeSantis signed it into law in 2022. They actually had to get legislation passed to see their grandkids. You know how difficult that is? It allows grandparents to petition for visitation rights when one parent is deceased and the other has been found responsible criminally or civilly for the death. Dan Markel's parents pushed for that law. They testified for it. They fought for it. They passed it because of what happened to their son and what happened to them afterwards. That's Dan Markel's legislative legacy, a law named after him because the system failed to protect both him and his parents' relationship with his children. Ruth and Phil Markel are still fighting. They're still pushing, and Wendy still has custody of Dan's sons. Those boys are teenagers now. They've grown up in the middle of all this, the trials, the media coverage, the family members going to prison one by one, their father murdered when they were toddlers. Their uncle is serving life in South Dakota. Their grandmother is serving life in Homestead. Whatever those boys know, whatever they've been told, whatever they believe, they're the ones who have to carry this forward. They're the ones who have to build lives out of whatever is left. Zoom out for a second. This case took 11 years from murder to final conviction. 11 years. A family that had everything, money, status, education, professional respect, a dental practice that threw off enough cash to allegedly fund a contract killing. All of it disintegrated because of one obsession: control. Donna couldn't accept that her grandchildren could grow up in Tallahassee instead of Miami. She couldn't accept a court ruling that didn't go her way, so according to prosecutors, she funded a murder. Charlie couldn't resist the family's gravitational pull. He was a successful whatever the hell this is. Periodontist is what he was. A guy with a girlfriend and a life, and prosecutors say he hired hitmen to kill his sister's ex-husband because that's what a family needed. That's what good brothers do. Magbanua needed Charlie's money and attention. The hitman needed cash. Everyone needed something. Dan Markel just needed to drop his kids off at preschool and go to the gym. He pulled into his garage on a July morning in 2014, and a man he'd never met walked up to his car with a gun. That's how this story started. It started with a custody dispute and ended with 5 people in prison and 2 boys who will spend the rest of their lives knowing what happened to their father. The system failed Dan Markel on July 18th, 2024. Nobody protected him. Nobody saw it coming. But over the next 11 years, slowly and painfully, the system did what it's supposed to do. It held people accountable. It followed the evidence. It convicted the killer and the people who paid them. 5 convictions, 5 people behind bars. Whether there will ever be a 6th or 7th remains an open question. Only one that Jack Campbell's office can answer. Donna Adelson wanted her family together in South Florida. She wanted her daughter close. She wanted her grandchildren in her orbit. She wanted to control where they lived, how they were raised, who had access to them. And according to the evidence presented at trial, she wanted it so badly that she helped fund a murder to make it happen. And now she's there. She's in South Florida, Homestead Correctional Institution, close enough for Harvey to visit, if he's able. Now, he can't do laundry or cook, so that might be a problem. Close enough to the life she destroyed trying to protect. And the woman prosecutors have identified as an unindicted co-conspirator who has denied any involvement and has never been charged. She's not behind bars. She's living in South Florida, raising her 2 boys who lost their father on that July morning 11 years ago. That's where the story sits for now. Give me your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. That is where you will find us. I'd love to get your thoughts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts right now, if you don't mind, take a quick second. Leave us a review in the comments section. We'd love to hear it. A few kind words there really makes our day. We put in ungodly amounts of hours into reporting on these cases and putting it all together. So just a few kind words on Apple Podcasts helps us grow in the rankings. That lets other folks know that we exist, helps people find us. Believe me, just that little bit of time there, if you got it, just, Hitting Killers with Tony Bruschi on Apple Podcast. A few kind words. Send, done. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. Until next time, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.